Hi, I'm Rebecca King from Quincy Community College, and we're coming to you from the Worcester Senior Center. And we're going to do our cooking segment today on a Mother's Day special. So we're going to do some quick and easy Mother's Day brunch ideas. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do a crustless quiche, which would be nice for Mother's Day brunch. So we've got the crustless quiche that we're going to do first. Then we're going to do a lavender scone, which are fairly quick and easy as well. And then we're going to finish it off while all that is baking. We're going to finish it off with a non-alcoholic white sangria. Okay, so we're going to start off with the crustless quiche. So this crustless quiche recipe has a couple different variations. I'm going to do mine with ham and chives and cheese. And then we're going to top it about midway through the cooking process with some nice asparagus. Really pretty presentation, pretty easy to do. So for the crustless quiche recipe, I'm going to do, I need 6 eggs. I'm going to get a bowl for that. I'm going to do my 6 eggs. I'm going to crack my 6 eggs in my bowl, just being mindful of the shells. Make sure I don't get any shells in there. All right, so got 3 eggs into it now. I need 3 more of those eggs. All right, I got a few shells in that last one, so I'm just going to use my shell. Typically a shell will attract a shell much easier than trying to track it around your finger. I got 2 small bits of shell in there. All right, got those out. It's important just to kind of keep your eyes out when you are cracking them. All right, so I've got my 6 eggs in there. I'm going to change out my gloves here. All right, so the next thing I need to measure out is 1 cup of milk. And typically not fat-free. Whole milk, 2% milk, even down to 1% milk is okay. Typically the lower fat milk doesn't give as much body and volume to your eggs. Kind of that fluffy nature that we like with our omelets and quiche. It's also a matter of holding it together, and with this not having a crust to hold it together, having a higher fat milk to kind of help hold it together is a good thing. All right, so I've got my 1 cup of milk, got my 6 eggs. All right, so next thing I'm going to need is my grated cheese. And I've got some nice cheddar cheese here. And you could do this whatever cheese you want. You could do a cheddar cheese. You could do a nice, you could do a Swiss cheese if you want with the ham and the asparagus. So any type of kind of shredded cheese that you want. The shredded typically melts and blends better for something like this. All right, so I'm going to go to my 1/2 cup here of my cheddar cheese. All right. And the recipe does state cheddar cheese or your choice of cheese. So that's going to depend on what you pick for your vegetables and your meat. Could help you decide which cheese you'd like to use. Alright, so at this point I've got my 6 eggs, I've got my 1 cup of milk, I've got my half a cup of cheddar cheese. I'm going to do 1 cup of bacon, and I just got some of this Smithfield Anytime ham. Alright. And this one's already diced, so if you don't want to do the work, you can just buy a ham steak and you can dice it up into little pieces, or you can get these ready-made diced pieces. So I just got some diced ham. They have cubed ham, which is a little bit bigger. I like the dice. It's a little smaller and bite-sized. But either one will work. All right. And I just need to do 1 cup of that ham. And this is an 8-ounce package, so it's going to definitely give me my cup, probably a little bit extra. I probably have just over a cup here in this 8-ounce package. All right. So at this point, I've got my 6 eggs, my 1 cup of milk, my half a cup of grated cheddar or shredded cheddar cheese, and I've got my 1 cup of diced ham. So the next thing I need is a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Got my little dishes here, and that's my 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And now I need 1/8 of a teaspoon of pepper, and if you don't have 1/8 of a teaspoon on your measuring spoons, which sometimes you do and sometimes you don't, basically that's just equivalent of a half of a 1/4 teaspoon. So you're going to just do half of a 1/4. That'll give you 1/8. Alright, so at this point I've got my 6 eggs, I've got my 1 cup of milk, I've got my half a cup of shredded cheddar, I've got my 1 cup of diced ham, I've got my 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt or sea salt or whatever you're using, and my 1/8 of a teaspoon of black pepper. Alright, so that gets me pretty much all my ingredients. I've got to preheat my oven to 350 degrees, so I've got that set up already. So you want to get your ovens to 350 degrees. Because we're not doing a crust, you want to take a pie plate and you want to spray that down with some pan spray. I don't like my floor to get slippery, so I like to spray it over a sink or the trash barrel or something. Alright, so I've got my nicely sprayed pie plate. Alright. So, that's step 1, preheating our ovens to 350 degrees. Step 2, spraying that pie plate really well because we are not using a crust. So you want to be able to get our crustless quiche out of the pan fairly easily. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our eggs. We've already got our eggs in a medium bowl. We've already cracked them in our medium bowl for step 2. We're going to beat those eggs. So kind of just start breaking the yolks, whipping them up a little bit. I like to whip them up pretty well before I add the milk to them. That way I know that those egg yolks and whites start to get pretty well beaten. Alright, now I'm going to add that milk. Kind of keep blending that. The more you kind of beat your egg and milk mixture, the more consistent and the more fluffy that your quiche will come out. If you don't have the whites and the yolks pretty well mixed up, sometimes you'll get those pockets of egg whites and stuff like that that won't be as tender and fluffy. Okay, so once I think I have this kind of combined the way I want it, all right, then we're going to add our cheese and our meat. All right. And I'm going to add a little bit of one of the options. So the recipe has several options of what you can do. I'm going to add some chives to this. I really like the look of the chives. That little bit of a flavor with the ham is nice. So I'm just going to take a second and chop a few of those chives up and add that to my egg mixture. Going to get that nice pop of green, that little tanginess of the chives in with our mixture. A little bit more delicate than if you added like a full chopped onion or even a scallion. Chives, they tend to be a little bit more delicate than that. I'm going to give that a nice mix. All right, I'm going to pour this into my pie plate here. And because a lot of those ingredients settle on the bottom of your bowl when you go to mix it, I'm going to give this just a quick little mix. In my pie plate, just to kind of distribute those ingredients fairly evenly, because the ham and everything can kind of clump up there. Just kind of mix it, let those chives and the cheese and the ham all kind of make their way fairly uniform. Okay, so we're going to place this, I'm going to do this onto a pan. And when your mixture sometimes boils or kind of bubbles over a little bit, so I like to do some soil, or actually I didn't do my salt and pepper. I'm going to mix my salt and pepper in there too. The good thing about measuring those ingredients out ahead of time, because then you know when they're left. I'm just going to give that another quick little mix and tap. Get those ingredients mixed together. So I do like to cover my pan a little bit, either with a piece of parchment paper like I have, or even some foil. Sometimes, especially if you're using a disposable pie plate, you might get some seepage out the bottom of the pan, or even if you have it slightly full, you might get that mixture might bubble over a little bit. And that makes a pretty big mess in your oven. So I do like to kind of just put it onto a cookie sheet or a pan to line it underneath and use the paper and foil, because that egg, when it kind of crusts on and burns on, makes a huge mess. Because I'm going to be pretty full, I'm going to walk fairly carefully to my oven here and pop this in. Carefully sliding it so I don't spill any of those ingredients. I'm going to set my timer for 25 minutes. And while our quiche is cooking, I'm going to bounce right onto my scones. We're going to get those scones ready to go in the oven right behind our, I'll set my cutting board aside here for after. All right, I'm going to move on to measuring out the ingredients for the Lavender Scones. Set my Crustless Quiche aside. All right, so because we want these scones to be nice and kind of hot and fresh, so we got the quiche going. We're going to make the scones now. So then while our quiche is kind of setting up, those scones will come out. We can finish those off, and you'll have some nice hot fresh scones to eat with your quiche. All right, so now I'm going to measure out the ingredients that I need for my scones. So the first thing I need is sugar. So these lemon lavender scones is a really nice springtime item to have, really great for Mother's Day. Of course, the lemon lavender makes your house smell wonderful. Very aromatherapy with the lemon and the lavender soothing qualities are really going to make your kitchen smell really fragrant. Hopefully get everybody into a nice Zen mind frame for Mother's Day. All right, so I've got my 1/4 cup of sugar. So the next thing I'm going to do is I need 2 tablespoons of lemon zest. Got some lemons here. All right. Now I'm probably going to need pretty close to 2 lemons for this, but I'm going to zest 1 lemon. Zester. Okay, so you can just use any type of fine zester. This is a microplane zester, but they also, any type of fine grater. Let's see if we got another one. So you can also get a little handheld grater like this, or even your box graters will have a fine, show you up there. So your box graters typically have a fine side to them. So any one of those will work. I like to use the microplaner one. Everybody has a preference for what they do. Just be careful anytime you're grating zest like this. Those little nubs are sharp. You want to give it, you don't want a lot of that white part of your lemon. That white part is the pith. There's a lot of bitterness in there. So it's important to kind of just do a few quick grates. And then kind of just keep rotating your lemon. So depending on the size of your lemon is going to dictate how much zest you get out of there. So I usually try not to over zest, so I'm going to just zest 1. Then we'll do a quick measurement to see how much zest we get before we go into another. And like I said, all the while watching those fingers. Some lemons have a little bit tougher skin, maybe a little bit thicker. You might get a little bit more zest out of. So that's why you just need to really gauge by the actual lemons that you're using. It's usually why there's not a quantity. There's usually a measurement for something like this. All right, so I'm going to see what I got here. And actually, I think we did pretty well with our zest. There might be some on the underside. Just gently with your finger. If it's the underside, it shouldn't be sharp, so you can just kind of clean that out by banging it, or just gently using your finger to clean it off. Okay, so now I'm going to look and see if I can get my 2 tablespoons of zest. And you notice that your recipe will say 2 tablespoons or 3 lemons, and like I said, don't go crazy zesting until you measure, because I'm going to tell you right now, I did 1 lemon, and I'm going to get my 2 tablespoons from that. So go by the measurement and not the quantity first. All right, so I got my 2 tablespoons out of my 1 zest. I've got a little bit on my board. Instead of wasting that, I'm just going to put that little extra bit in there. It's not going to hurt. Okay, so now I'm going to move up to, I need 3/4 cups of milk. Actually, I can use my milk cup from before. I got my milk cup from my quiche I can use. And I need 3/4 of a cup. right, so I've got my 3/4 of a cup of milk. So at this point, I've got my 1/4 cup of sugar, my 2 tablespoons of lemon zest, with my 3/4 of a cup of milk. All right, so the next thing that I'm going to do is I need a 1/4 cup of fresh lemon juice. So we can take that lemon that we already zested. I'm going to cut that open with my board. I've got a juicer right here. These are a nice seedless lemon, so I can just squeeze them right into a cup if I want to, or I can use the juicer. Or if you have a citrus press, you can use that as well. Any of those will work. All right. It's much easier. You don't have to have the seedless. Just be careful if you are using the ones with the seeds that you're catching the seeds in the juice. This juicer that I have actually catches the seeds and any pulp that might be left behind. All right. So I'm going to see what I get out of this one. So not quite a 1/4. So I'm going to just juice a 1/2 of a lemon for right now. Let's see how close that gets me. So we're not wasting our lemons. I may need to do the second 1/2, but for now I'm just going to try 1/2 to see how close it gets me. And that gets me to the 1/4. So that was roughly 1 1/2 of my lemons to get me to my 1/4 cup of fresh lemon juice. So now I need a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. Get my 1/2 teaspoon here. All right, so 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. So at this point, I've got my 1/4 cup of sugar, my 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, my 3/4 cups of milk, my 1/4 cup of lemon juice, and my 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. So the next thing I'm going to need is 2 1/2 cups of flour. And my flour, you want to make sure you level that off with a straight edge. So I'm just going to take my back of my knife, my straight edge, and I'm going to level that off. So I've got my 1 cup. Got my 2 cups. And now I just need a 1/2. And I've got my 1/2 cup. So there's my 2 1/2 cups of flour. All right, so at this point I've got my 1/4 cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of grated lemon zest, 3/4 cup of milk, 1/4 cup of lemon juice. I've got my 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla and our 2 1/2 cups of flour. So the next thing I need is baking powder. Not unusual for a quick bread to have baking powder or baking soda or both. So I need 1 tablespoon. Yet again, I'm going to take the back of my knife. I'm going to level that out. Precise measurement is the best way to guarantee your baked products come out right. So just make sure you're doing that exact measurement with the leveling off. So 1 tablespoon of baking powder. And I've got baking soda. Whenever you're using baking soda and baking powder, you'll find baking powder is typically used in a larger quantity than the baking soda. So I need a 1/2 teaspoon of the baking soda. Get that leveled off. Got a half a teaspoon of baking soda. Next thing I need is salt, and when you bake, you want to stick to a fine grain salt, whether it be table salt or sea salt. Distributes better through the baking product. This helps with that chemistry. If you use a coarse ground salt, it doesn't always distribute evenly through your baking product. So I've got my half a teaspoon of salt, and I'm just using a fine grain sea salt. All right, so now I need 2.5 teaspoons of lavender flour. So you can get culinary lavender from places like Whole Foods. We get this at on Amazon. You could even just do some fresh lavender and pull the flowers off, dry them out for a couple of days. You can certainly do this recipe without the lavender. That'll be fine. You just won't have that same fragrance to it. But it is nice with the lavender. So I need 2.5 teaspoons of this lavender. And if you're concerned about the lavender, it can be a little potent. You could just easily do that as 2 teaspoons. If you're worried about that flavor intensity or whether or not the people you're making it for might like the lavender in there, you could go a little less, 1.5 to 2 teaspoons. It's not going to hurt your recipe. It's mainly for the fragrance and the flavor and not the chemistry. Okay, so the next thing I need is a half a cup of cold butter. So I've got a big butter block. You guys will be using probably sticks from the store. If you're using sticks from the store, it's just 1 full stick. Would be a half a cup. And because this is a quick bread in a biscuit method, you want to make sure that you're using cold butter. Okay, just cuts into your product. Better if you have that warm fat, it can actually affect the outcome of your product. So I'm just going to lightly cube this up so we can mix this into our mixture. So I usually just leave my butter in the fridge until I'm ready to use it. You may not end up with nice cubes. Butter can be kind of brittle, especially if you've had it frozen before. Some people freeze their butter if they buy a couple at a time. You'll find it'll be a little bit more brittle, but when butter's cold, it does tend to kind of break down and brittle. All right, so I got my half a cup of cold butter. Okay, so now we're ready to put our ingredients together. So in a small bowl, we're going to do the sugar and lemon zest. So I'm just going to combine one with the other. My sugar and lemon zest. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to make a citrus sugar. That's pretty much what's going to happen here. So we're going to infuse that sugar with our citrus. We're going to do that by rubbing our fingers in there. We're going to make that lovely, so all that nice citrus juice that's in that zest, we're going to kind of infuse that into our sugar and make our sugar more flavorful in our mixture. All right, so we're going to want it more like a coarse sand mixture. Get that nice lemon sugar happening. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to combine our milk and lemon juice. Change that glove quick. Sugary fingers. All right, so we're going to kind of just do like a little bit of a sour milk, almost like a buttermilk, with our by mixing our lemon juice into our milk mixture. Just lends a nice soured milk, lends a nice buttery, fluffy texture to any biscuit type method. That's why buttermilk biscuits, pancakes, things like that have that nice flavor to them. It's typically the buttermilk. And that's pretty much what we're doing here by adding the lemon juice to the milk, is kind of making that soured or buttermilk consistency. It's going to make our scones delicious. All right, so mix that and setting that aside. Oh, and we're going to add our vanilla there. So making a vanilla buttermilk. All right, so now I'm going to get a slightly bigger bowl here. And I'm going to add my flour. And my baking powder. And my baking soda. And my salt. So basically all my dry ingredients and my lavender. So flour, baking soda, salt are all going in with my lavender in this bowl. I'm going to get myself a spoon or spatula. Just kind of give this a stir. Because quick breads, you don't want to overmix, so mixing them too much is actually a bad thing. Any mixing that you do, you want to make sure is happening during the dry process and before we add all those nice liquids and things to it. All right. So once we get that mixed pretty well, we're going to add that nice lemon sugar mixture to there. Get that lemon sugar mixed in there. Yet again, get all that mixing kind of done and out of the way before we cut our butter into there or add our milk. So now you're going to really smell that lemon and lavender aroma now that we've got them both in here. All right, so now I'm going to add that butter, that cold butter mixture. All right, and you can do that by making your own kind of pastry blenders. You can take two knives and kind of do an X or a crisscross pattern. All right, and just kind of rotating them different directions in the bowl to do that, cutting the flour and the butter together. Or if you have a pastry blender, which looks like this, these little rocking grooves here as a handle, you could do that. And that's going to help cut that butter into the flour mixture. I'm just going to keep doing that, kind of mixing it around. You want to do it until that butter flour mixture is about the size of peas. So about pea size. So coarse pea size chunks in there. All right. So once we kind of think that we've got that flour and butter mixture, and periodically I take out my knives and my pastry blender and kind of clean them off. Sometimes your big chunks of butter can get stuck in there. Just to make sure you've got them all kind of divvied up in there. So, get my pastry blender pretty well cleaned off there. And if you want, you can just take your hands and you can kind of go through the mixture. Just make sure you don't have any big chunks by just kind of rubbing it through your fingers. You just don't want big pockets of butter. Like I said, you want to stick to that kind of pea size texture. All right. But once you think you got all those big chunks kind of broken up in there, then we're going to add our milk mixture. Just about there. I got a few more chunks I think that I need to mix up in here. All right. Okay, so I think I've got all mine there. Change out my gloves from my floured and buttered fingers. All right, so now I'm going to add my milk, and this is the part of the process you want to be really careful that you're just kind of folding that milk in, and that you're not over mixing the mixture. Okay, if you have a tendency to over mix it, a lot of things can happen. Your scones may not fluff up how you want them to be. They might be a little tough side. They can get something called tunneling, which is you get all these grooves and cracks inside your scones, which can affect the texture of your scones. All right, so I'm going to give one more good stir of my milk mixture. And then I'm just going to kind of slowly mix and fold that mixture in there. All right. Rubber spatula is good for this, rubber or wooden, one or the other. And you're just going to kind of keep folding it onto itself. It's not a heavy stir, but just kind of a nice fold until it starts to form a dough. Scrape in the bowls as you go along, which is where the rubber spatulas come in nice. It may still look like it's a little crumbly. Don't panic about that. Once you feel like you kind of have it pretty well mixed, then we can kind of form the dough with our hands. You're going to be amazed at how moist it is. Sometimes you just need to work at the dough a little bit with your hands in the end. So don't go crazy thinking it's really dry, and you need to, because if you start to mix the remainder with your hands, you're going to be amazed at how much that dry is going to get sucked up into your dough. So work it a bit with your hands first before you panic and think that you need to add more liquid. And oftentimes kind of folding it and working with your hands in the end is a way to prevent the overmixing as well, because you're kind of just doing that folding by hand and not a heavy mix. So you can see I'm picking up almost all my dry there, even though I had a lot of dry when I started working it with my hands. So my dough is plenty moist now that I've worked it with my hands a bit. You would have ended up with a really sticky, wet dough if you added any more liquid. So definitely make sure you're working it out with your hands before you think about adding anything to it. So I've got kind of a nice dough here. So I'm just going to clean my station, set a few things aside here. Just wipe some crumbs out of my way. Right, some of the residue. It's all the same stuff that's in my ingredients. Just going to give it a quick wipe because there's not a lot of debris. In the meantime, my quiche has gone off, so I'm going to give that a check before I get going with my scones. And also, I set my timer to be able to kind of add my asparagus so I can put it back in the oven for about 5 minutes. So when you initially bake your quiche, and the recipe notes that if you want to do the nice asparagus on top, you just will lay it on there and put it back in the oven for a few minutes. But if you were to put the asparagus on there where it was raw and that really liquid, your asparagus would actually sink down into your quiche. and you wouldn't have that nice on top look that we're kind of aiming to do. Just remember with asparagus, you can just kind of snap them. It's going to keep you where it's fresh. Anything below where you snap can be kind of tough and woody. All right. Probably going to do about 6 or 7 of these. Should be enough to coat and cover the top of my quiche. So I'm just going to kind of arrange these over it. Gently push them in there on the top. Nice little arrangement, and then we're going to put it in there for about 5 minutes. Afterwards. Perfect. So I ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 on my quiche for my asparagus. I want to pop those in for about 5 minutes. Asparagus typically doesn't take too long to cook. And like I said, when you get the recipe, it does kind of tell you the steps and timing for doing the asparagus too. All right, so I'm going to get a little flour onto my surface. You could do a silicone mat, or if you have a marble board, ceramic countertop, anything like that, works well for kind of rolling these out. Give me a pin, Matt. Pin. Rolling. All right, so I'm going to kind of mold my dough here. No, a pin. A rolling pin. Sorry. All right, so I've got my dough kind of formed there. Make sure I set my, yeah, I did set my timer. French. Got a rolling pin here. I like to dust my tin a little bit. When I like to do like a light layer, a light dusting on my table or surface, a little bit of flour off to the side so I can pull it there if I need to. So what you're looking to do when you do your scones is you don't want to roll them out super thin. You want to have them pretty close to about, I'd say probably 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch. And I like to do them, you can either do them as a circle, or you can do them as a bit of a rectangle, whichever works for you. I do like to pick up my dough and kind of flip it over, because I do find that the dough tends to stick, and you don't want to go through all the work of kind of cutting and shaping these. And then have your dough about the thickness I want there. Because if you do that, then your dough is going to stick, and then when you go to cut them and kind of pull them off the surface, you're going to run into the fact that they're going to stick and pull. All right, so I've got kind of my scones traditionally kind of in a circle. I'm going to cut it right down the middle like a clock from 12 to 6 o'clock. And like I said, I'm probably at about 3/4 of an inch to an inch, and that's a good consistency for a scone. And then I'm going to do another one across my circle. That's going to go from about 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And then, depending on what size scones you want to have, you can cut each one of those triangles either in half, or if you want to get a few extra portions, you can even do those pieces of the clock in 3s. So I'm going to get 8 out of this by doing it in half, and then in half again. So I've got my pan here. I'm going to set my pan out. So yet again, I've got my pan with my parchment paper. I like to alternate my triangles when I put them on here. Just carefully pick them up because, like I said, you might get a little sticky. And when you're cutting into that, make sure you kind of just kind of saw your way down. The dough can be sticky. It might stick to your knife. You don't want to kind of really pull the dough. So like I said, I like to do my triangles one up, one down, kind of alternate them when I pan them up. So, all right. You can kind of spread them out if you want. And do them like this. All right, that's my timer to check my quiche. I give my quiche about 2 more minutes just for my asparagus there. That'll give us time to finish our scones and get them in. All right. So we've got our scones down on the pan. All right. So I've got them into my triangles. And depending on how you want to form them and how many triangles you want and the size you want, your recipe does tell you how to kind of cut those to get the different sizes. And also to get the shape that you need. All right, so we've got them on the baking sheet. They are going to expand and puff up. And then we are going to add just a little bit of milk to these. Not a lot. We're just going to lightly brush them. By lightly brushing them with the milk, we're going to help them brown. We're going to get a really nice color. It's going to add a little moisture to them. Not uncommon for a lot of doughs and pastries to brush them either with milk or like an egg wash. It's just going to give them a really nice color. And you want to make sure you do the tops and the sides, kind of get a nice coating all the way around the scones. All right. Shut that buzzer off. And we're going to just swap places in the oven there. We're going to get these scones in. And we'll pull that quiche out. Give that a check. Scones, they're ready to go in. I'll pull my quiche out. All right, so I'm going to cook those scones. I have a convection oven, so it says 19 to 22 minutes. I've done this recipe before. I'm going to check mine in 15 minutes. With the convection oven, it does cook with a high fan. It cooks a little bit faster, especially with your baked items. So I'm going to do 15 minutes, and then I'm going to give them a check. So my quiche is out. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to kind of lay that there for a second. Find one of my knives. And I'm going to just, the way you check something like a quiche, you're going to do it with a butter knife. Or even just a sharp knife. I can do that too. So sharp knife, butter knife. If you put it right in the dead center, you stick it in, and it comes out, you're just looking for it not to have, so it should come out clean. It'll come out a little wet, but as long as it's a clear wet, you're good. But if it comes out with any white kind of liquidy substance, then your eggs aren't cooked all the way through, okay? Or your eggs and milk mixture. So this quiche is done. We've got it really nice and pretty with our asparagus on top. I'm going to set it back here for now. And then we're going to get ourselves reset here to do our sangria. Okay, so we've got our scones in the oven, so that we're waiting for those to be done. So while that's happening, we've got our quiche done. Our scones are in. So while that's happening, we're going to make our non-alcoholic white sangria. So we're going to do 1 lemon. I'm going to do this one right here. That's a pretty one. So it's going to start off with 1 lemon slice. So I'm going to just cut the ends off here till I get into the flesh. All right, that looks good. I'm going to do my 1 lemon sliced here. Maybe some long slices. Remember, as you're slicing, just kind of keep moving those fingers back as you're slicing. If you start to get to this end, it gets a little harder to slice. You can actually just slice it right on your board. Probably won't get much more without getting to the white. That's pretty much it. So we've got our nice slices of lemon right there. We need to get our orange slice. We're going to do the same thing. Kind of keep slicing it till we get down to that nice flesh. So this would be a great springtime. They make a lot of non-alcoholic recipes for both red sangrias and white. This one I think is just a really nice springtime one to do for Mother's Day. It's really a matter of preference. But I was going for that real springtime feel for Mother's Day, being May. So, got my orange sliced and my lemon sliced. So now I need some strawberries. We get some nice strawberries here. Get those things sliced up. Do 5 of those. Cut the tops off of those strawberries. Alright, make sure my top's all cleaned off. I'm going to put these in a nice container. Do them like in slices of 3 or 4 depending on the size or the width of these strawberries. Some of the bigger ones, I'll do 4 slices. Smaller ones, we'll do a few less. 3. Alright, so we've got our strawberry slice there. And the next thing we're going to need is our 10 to 15 green grapes. Yeah. Alright, so I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 12. That works. Split the difference. So we've got our green grapes, our strawberries, our sliced lemons. So now we need about 8 to 10 sprigs of mint. So I'm just going to pull my mint off my stems here. Get us to the ones that we need. Alright, so I've got my mint there. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to need is blueberries. About 20 of those. I put them in with my grapes here. Just make sure you're perusing those for stems. 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Got some nice big blueberries here. 14, 16, 18, and 20. All right. So we've got our 20 blueberries. So the next thing we need is 12 ounces of the white grape juice. Is also going to be 1.5 cups. All right. That's our scones. I'm going to give those a check. They're still a little pale, but remember I went on the light side for my time because of the convection oven. So I'm going to do those for probably another 5 more minutes. All right, so I've got my 12 ounces of white grape juice. I need to do another 12 ounces. This is Tropicana 50. That's what the recipe calls for, so not as sweet. And I've got a no sugar added white grape juice. So there's no extra sugar in there. Just the natural sugar. And of course, if you need to do sugar-free, you can do all these with sugar-free. It's up to you. But this one is a reduced calorie top 50. And we have the no sugar added white grape. So just with the sugar from the fruit. All right. So we've got those two there. And then the next thing we have is sparkling water. Now it's going to be 24 ounces. I've got a 1 liter bottle, which is about 33 ounces. So it's going to be more than enough of what we need. All right, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to pour our grape juice and our orange. Okay. So before I do my sparkling water, now I'm going to add my fruit to it. We are going to do some garnish. I've got a few skewers, or you can use a toothpick or whatever you have at home. I've got these nice bamboo skewers. So what you can do is, however you want to do them, I'm just going to kind of fold mine over onto my skewers. Do a lemon, do an orange. I'm going to do them 2 different directions, kind of fold it over like that. I'm going to throw a strawberry slice on there and finish it up with a grape and a blueberry. All right. And then we can just do I've got a little bit of a knot here. I can put my sprig of mint in there. Do it as my garnish. I could just drop it into my thing, or I could even thread it through my orange here. However you want to do it, you can assemble your skewers however you want. I can do another one. This time I can start with my mint leaf. And then I could do berries at the top if I want. I could do my grape and my blueberry. And then if I wanted to do my slices on the bottom, I could do it that way. So any way you want, just lay your skewers how you feel like having them. Okay, so the rest of this, I'm just going to add my slices. The remainder of my slices in here. Then I can do my berries. My berries and my grapes. Do my remaining mint leaves. All right, so I've got nice colorful items there. So now I'm going to add my sparkling, and I need 24 ounces. Woo! Warm seltzer. The warm seltzer sometimes tends to foam up and out. And if you want to add ice to this and you don't want to dilute it that much, you could add your seltzer, and then we can go ahead and add our ice. But you would scale back on your ice. I mean, you would scale back, I think, on your seltzer a little bit when you add your ice to it. And if you want, you can just do that. So I just did 24 ounces of seltzer in there, and 16 ounces of seltzer in there. So what you can do is, if you do it up ahead of time like this, and what you can do is you can add the extra 8 ounces as kind of a splash. Can you grab me the glass now? You can add your extra 8 ounces as just kind of a splash to an individual serving as you serve them for your brunch. So my scones are good. They're nice and brown. Get a nice color to them. I'm going to set those aside for a minute so we can plate those up. All right. So like I said, the recipe calls for 24 ounces of the plain seltzer. I only did 16 in my mixture for now. I like to kind of keep that bubbly kind of fizz to it when it's being served. So we're just going to kind of mix that together. You can just kind of swirl it, use a spoon. I'm going to do a little bit of ice in my glass. How much ice you use is going to depend on your preference. So I've got my glass here. I'll get that ready to go. So like I said, you can just kind of mix it. So we'll add that. And if you want to take a spoon to your mixture, you can do some of that loose ingredient. You can leave it in your pitcher, or you can put a few in the glass. You can do it with your skewers. This guy right in here. Okay. So that would be your glass. And like I said, if you wanted to add that little bit of fizz, you could add that extra couple ounces that we didn't put into the whole pitcher. And just freshen it up with a little bit of the sparkling on top as you serve it. Just kind of helps keep that fresh sparkle each time you pour a glass. So like I said, you can put it all in the pitcher if you want, if you think it's going to be served right away. I like to scale back on the sparkling a little bit for that, and then just add a little bit of sparkling for every glass that I pour, just to kind of keep it that fresh effervescence. All right, so I'm going to finish off my scones, and I'm going to do that by doing a little bit of a glaze. I need my powdered sugar. So the way we finish this up is just need 1 cup of powdered sugar. I'll put that right in this mixing cup here. I only 1 cup of powdered sugar. And I'm going to do I'm going to start off with 1 tablespoon of milk so I don't go too runny. I like to do milk, but it says milk or lemon juice. Don't do both milk and lemon juice. And then you have the option of doing a little bit of lemon zest, which I like to do. So I'm just going to do zest, a little bit of lemon in there. Not crazy because we put a lot of zest in those scones, but I like that little bit of texture of the lemon in the glaze and that little pop of lemon in the glaze. So the recipe calls for 1 teaspoon, but yet again, you can kind of moderate that however you want. I think that's going to look good for me. And I'm just going to mix this up. All right. Like I said, I like to start with the 1 tablespoon. And if I need to do a little bit more milk, which I think I do, just be careful. This powdered sugar sucks up milk. So little at a time. Don't go crazy. You want to do it just till it mixes. So I just did a quick splash and I was really thick, and now I'm starting to really thin out. So just be really careful with how much you add. Little goes a long way. Because that powdered sugar is going to absorb that liquid pretty fast. All right. I think that's a good consistency. You want to just that you can kind of drizzle this over your scones pretty well. All right. So I am going to just grab a plate so we can plate our brunch. All right. So I've got my plate here. Got a nice pie server. All right, I'm just going to take my drizzle here, and just take your drizzle and you can just drizzle it right over your scones. You kind of want to do this before your icing hardens. So do it when you mix it. It'll kind of set up on your scones too. If you do it that way, it won't be as sticky. So it doesn't take long to do this icing. All right, so I've got all my scones drizzled there. So in order to do my brunch plate, I'm going to take one of these guys. I'm going to place it right on my plate here. And then I'm going to take my quiche. I'll cut myself a piece off here. First piece always comes out a little messy. Okay. So we've got our little bit of our quiche with our scone, and we've got our white sangria. And that is a nice springtime Mother's Day brunch.